On the podium, Zhu Zheng waved his hand and spoke righteously. All organizations participating in this operation can go to the headquarters to collect weapons, equipment, and other supplies. Zhang Yi immediately knew that this was also a way to confirm how many forces were truly involved in the operation. If it turns out that the number of participating forces is insufficient, then the next logical step would be to assign tasks by name. With a raised hand, someone suddenly stood up amidst the seated crowd and confidently expressed his desire to accept the mission. He would gladly lead his faction to Linhai City to encircle and suppress the eclipse moon. Immediately as he said this, 5 other people suddenly emerged, also expressing their desire to join the hunt. From their perspective, such a good opportunity could not be wasted. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows and thought this situation was perfect. In this case, he wouldn't be forced to show up for the time being. Whether these forces are out of consideration for the righteousness of their country or simply for the benefits promised by Zhu Zhang, there's probably enough cannon fodder to carry out the mission now. You see, given the limited information they had on the enemy, it was extremely risky to take the lead. Nonetheless, Zhang Yi never takes the lead, even if the benefits were considerable. If they can successfully wipe out those Ronin, that would be the best. And if they can't, well, Zhang Yi can also use this to obtain more intelligence. The more information he gets, the better and higher his chances of winning will be when he's naturally or forced to take action. In a respectful manner, Lan Xinqing led the forces willing to go to encircle and suppress this rebellion to another venue to officially sign up and receive supplies. Zhu Zheng thanked everyone for coming and for their patience. You can move freely in Blizzard City, he said. And if there's any other need, we will contact you again through your communication equipment. So with that, the meeting was finally and officially adjourned with a burst of excited voices. Zhu Zheng then proceeds to exit the scene together with Tu Yunlai and Sun Luxuan, trailing behind. Looking at these enthusiastic mutants, a faint light flashed in Zhang Yi's eyes. With only 13 people, they destroyed all the forces in Linhai City. How strong is this eclipse moon? Will they be stronger than the investigation teams of Blizzard City? If that were the case, who knows how many people would die among those sent to encircle and suppress the rebellion. Zhang Yi quietly left the venue with his people without making a sound. The scene then shifted to the operations center. In the commander's office, Zhu Zheng was sitting in his chair, looking at the report handed over by Lan Xinqing. In the end, there were a total of 10 forces that signed up to go to Linhai City to encircle and suppress Eclipse Moon. This was already a lot, not a small number by their previous estimation, and a very powerful force. Zhu Zheng nodded. Although there were many forces of all sizes that came to Blizzard City, many of them could not participate in the encirclement and suppression for various reasons. The main and common issue was the geographical location of Linhai City. It was too far away from their cities, or they have other concerns that needed their immediate attention. However, Zhu Zheng did not see any signature of any leader in Tianhai City, especially Zhang Yi's. A slight frown crossed his face. After all, Tianhai City was very close to Linhai City, and Zhang Yi was strong enough. But he was afraid to fight, which was really a disappointment. He felt that Bailey Chongqing was right. Zhang Yi was too cunning and difficult to control. Zhu Zheng thought of Bailey Chongqing's evaluation of Zhang Yi, and couldn't help but sigh. This person puts personal interests first, and is indeed not suitable to be accepted into our Blizzard City. Hearing this, Lan Xinqing, in a respectful and gentle tone, reminded Zhu Zheng in hopes to be a bit partial and understandable. Obviously, after the previous zombie-tide turmoil, Tianhai City is now almost abandoned. Not only are there few living people, but the major forces are also seriously damaged. Judging from their current strength, they are simply unable to undertake regional stability maintenance activities. Now Zhang Yi's performance is also unsatisfactory. Why not consider supporting a group of new forces? Zhu Zheng heard this and his eyebrows trembled slightly. In fact, he was already a little moved. The huge Tianhai City was originally a super city with a population of 20 million. And the resources of that city were also very rich. But now, the population is declining, and the major forces guarding it were unable to govern except Zhang Yi's team. It was better to introduce forces from other cities. This was a strategic play on Zhu Zheng's perspective. On one hand, it can stabilize the stability of the Tianhai area, and on the other, it can also give Zhang Yi a check and balance to prevent him from dominating Tianhai City alone. To put it bluntly, Zhu Zheng didn't like Zhang Yi's solitary style. He tapped his left hand on his desk and said slowly, "This matter can be included in the plan. It just so happens that there are 10 forces participating in the mission in Linhai City this time. When the mission is completed, if there are not enough territory in Linhai City, we can introduce a few forces to Tianhai City so that it will be easy to handle." The two were casually dividing Tianhai City like a cake, not knowing that they were opening a Pandora's box. You see, for Zhang Yi, it doesn't matter because Tianhai City was too large, and to be honest, a tedious job to be solely under his authority. Also, Zhang Yi's team was small and only needed and was satisfied with 2 territories, Lujiang District and Xishan District. These 2 were enough for him to live a peaceful and luxurious life in his shelter. And no matter how much Zhu Zhang tosses or split the rest of the cake, it had nothing to do with him. It only affects the interests of the other 3 forces. However, the issue lies with how bottomless human greed is. If given the go-ahead, these factions would try to absorb all the forces and territories in Tianhai City. And it has long been established how ruthless Zhang Yi can be when it comes to snatching what belongs to him. Zhang Yi can only give face to the Jiangnan district, but that's about it. Any further compromise was not an option. At this moment, a sudden knock on the door alerted Zhu Zhang and Lan Xinqing. A voice came from the other end of the door. "Commander, Captain Deng Shentong of the God Squad wants to see you." Zhu Zhang heard this and raised his hand to permit Deng Shentong to enter. Lan Xinqing raised her voice a little. "Let him in." She then turned back to Zhu Zhang with a smile. Deng Shentong probably came here to challenge for a fight. Zhu Zhang smiled. The God Squad led by Deng Shentong was the most famous team in Blizzard City, and this was largely due to Deng Shentong. He was young, strong, and warlike. He is also the most active person in carrying out every mission, eager to make achievements and make a name for himself. Currently, he has been on the top of the Blizzard City scoreboard for nearly 2 months straight, and as a result, many people in Blizzard City believe that he is the best player in the Jiangnan region. Couple this with his excellent background and handsome appearance. Many people believe that once Zhu Zhang retires, Deng Shentong will take over the position of regional commander. Facing this young genius, Zhu Zhang admires and likes his dedication very much. Shortly after, Deng Shentong opened the door and confidently entered Zhu Zhang's office. And as soon as he walked over, he asked Zhu Zhang, "Commander, why didn't you let us go to carry out this mission?" Deng Shentong continued with some contempt. Although the number of teams sent for this mission is large, it is obvious that they are unprofessional and there are conflicts among them already. The other party, however, is obviously not an ordinary organization and doesn't have these issues. If they really want to escape, the forces in the outer cities can't even compete, let alone catch them at all. These forces from the outer cities might even fight each other for the right to fight the enemy alone than to unite and cooperate. After hearing this, Zhu Zhang was calm and his face showed no trace of uneasiness. It was evident that he'd thought all this through. He leaned back in his chair and asked casually, "Do you know much about Eclipse Moon?" Deng Shentong was a little taken aback, but didn't say anything. They had never had any contact with this rebellion from Japan, and they also hadn't gotten any intelligence about them either. Zhu Zhang took a deep breath and offered some explanation. Nowadays, Japan is divided into 2 factions, Kanto and Kansai. One is the Izumo in Kanto, and the other is the Pelican in Kansai. And the Eclipse group is a Ronin group that runs rampant under the jurisdiction of Kanto. Even the Izumo organization, which controls most of the official power in Kanto, is helpless against them. From this, it can be seen that the strength of this group of Ronin is very strong, even comparable to our investigation teams. Zhu Zhang stared at Deng Shentong. His eyes became serious. "Before getting accurate information, I can't let you take risks. After all, the 6 major investigation teams are the pillars of Blizzard City." Deng Shentong frowned. Japan is just a small country. How strong can the rampant mutant organization there be? Zhu Zhang shook his head helplessly with his eyes closed. Don't underestimate your opponents. To underestimate them is to underestimate yourself. You should know that we suffered heavy losses in the Patriotic War. Our losses with them were 5-1 or even 9-1. We can despise the enemy strategically, but we must take the enemy seriously tactically and never be careless. Deng Shentong took a moment to calm down and analyze the situation objectively. Although the land area of Japan is not large, it is also the land of a province and hundreds of millions of people. According to this ratio, it is not surprising that many powerful mutants were also born from it. Deng Shentong understood Zhu Zhang's purpose and perspective. So what you mean is that letting the forces in the outer city go to Linhai City first is actually for them to obtain information about Eclipse Moon? Zhu Zhang nodded approvingly. That's right. That's the exact purpose. Of course, it would be best if they can successfully get rid of these mutants. But that's just wishful thinking. So, in this way, even if they fail, at least we can get some intelligence about Eclipse Moon, which will be beneficial when the time comes for you to attack. Shaking his head slightly, Deng Shentong understood Zhu Zhang's idea and relaxed a little, but given the strength of those people, it would be difficult to achieve this goal. Somehow, Zhang Yi's figure suddenly emerged in Deng Shentong's mind. Among the forces in the outer city, there are not many people who can catch his eye. Zhang Yi is undoubtedly the most outstanding one, mainly because he beat Wu Di. Deng Shentong couldn't help asking, "Is Jiang Yi from Tianhai City going?" Hearing Deng Shentong asking about Jiang Yi, Zhu Zhang was a little surprised and obviously a little unhappy. This arrogant and proud captain of the god team rarely heard other people's name from his mouth that he deemed insignificant. "That guy," Zhu Zhang said with a little bit of disappointment. "He didn't even sign up for this operation. How cunning." Deng Shentong's eyes flashed a little, but he smiled and comments with his hands crossed on his chest. It's better to say that he is very smart. At least he knows that this mission is not that simple. Zhu Zhang obviously didn't like this statement and said with a stern face, "If everyone is as self-centered as him, then the Superpower Federation will not be able to continue." Zhu Zhang is a soldier, and soldiers believe in unconditional obedience to orders, and the only principle of action is to follow the will of the top leaders. But Deng Shentong and Jiang Yi are not, although their level of obedience are vastly apart. So Deng Shentong not only thinks Jiang Yi is rebellious, but appreciates his intelligence. Deng Shentong uses people as long as they have talents, and he can barely tolerate others. After all, he is an excellent leader. And excellent leaders are good at discovering the strengths of their subordinates and letting them develop into better versions of themselves. Well, everyone has their own aspirations. "Commander, I will take my people down to train first and serve Blizzard City at any time." Zhu Zhang gave him the go-ahead when he heard this. Deng Shentong knew he must hurry up and recruit Jiang Yi into his god team. Otherwise, it will be a shame. And just like his previous exit scene at the password bar, Deng Shentong disappeared from Zhu Zhang's office without a trace. Meanwhile, back outside the venue, Zhang Yi led everyone out of the Tianchong Hall, which was still bustling. Although the meeting was over, many people stayed there, actively discussing the situation in Linhai City. Amidst this discussions were mocking voices aimed at the forces in Tianhai City. With Tianhai City being right next to Linhai City, factions from other cities find it really embarrassing that none of the forces in Tianhai City are actually participating in the encircling and suppressing of Eclipse Moon. These voices made the faces of the people present change. Zhang Yi wasn't the least bit bothered when he heard this, and he'd already asked Bailey Changqing for more information if possible. Zhang Yi also told the other forces that they were free to sign up if they wanted. Sun Jiaming, a leader of a faction from Day City, was the person instigating these discussions. Seeing this, Chun Jingguan's face turned black and blue with anger, and humiliation also filled his eyes. Zhang Yi frowned slightly when he saw the three major forces in Day City gathered together and approached them. The number of mutants in these three forces was much larger than that of Tianhai City. Naturally, the momentum overshadowed them. Xiao Honglian and the others were a little nervous. The difference in numbers was too big. Xiao Honglian subconsciously looked at Zhang Yi. If Zhang Yi decides to take action, they have a chance to win. Actually, they will definitely win. Based on their previous encounters, she knew Zhang Yi only fights battles he was certain of winning, and this made her feel a little more at ease. You see, Xiao Honglian, like everyone else, is aware that the pattern of the Jiangnan region will definitely change in the future. So she has decided that the best course of action her base needed was to be under the protective umbrella of Zhang Yi, who is currently unrivaled in Tianhai City. The leaders of the three major forces in Days City walked over. There is still some distance between them, and it can be seen that their relationship was not so harmonious. It's just that when they put pressure on Tianhai City, their goals are the same. Zhang Yi spoke in a calm and indifferent tone. Didn't Zhu Zhang say that this matter is entirely voluntary? It seems that you don't need to worry about what we do, right? Sun Jianming and the other two looked at each other, and the contempt in their eyes became stronger. Even the mutants next to them sneered. You can even say such things. It's really hilarious. In the face of the righteousness of the country, you only know how to hide like a turtle. Are you really qualified to represent Tianhai City? If you ask me, now that the power of your city has been weakened, it would be better to give it up early. Just look at the leader of Morning Dew Base. The factions in Days City unscrupulously mocked the forces in Tianhai City. This undoubtedly made everyone in Tianhai City look very ugly. Even the good-tempered Liang Yu couldn't help but frown and look at Zhang Yi subconsciously. As long as Zhang Yi gives the go-ahead, they would rush up without hesitation and give these people a good beating. However, Zhang Yi listened to their sarcasm, but there was no expression on his face. The weak will be angry because of the stimulation of others, such as Chen Jingguan. Because of weakness, they have low self-esteem, so they can't stand others' ridicule. But for the strong, the voice of ants is too small and hard to hear. How could he lose his composure because of a group of bugs? He could only pity their ignorance. But Zhang Yi would not take action outside the Tianchong Guild Hall. Presumably, the other party also intended to provoke them to take action, and then retaliate fiercely. In this way, even if the high-level officials of Blizzard City blamed them, they could push the responsibility onto the mutants of Tianhai City. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes, filled with pure killing intent. He really wanted to step on these annoying bugs one by one, but he had to be patient. Zhang Yi smiled slightly and excused himself. Then he motioned for his team beside him to follow. "Let's go." Zhang Yi turned around without looking back and walked towards the distant apartment. After all, he had important matters to take care of than to entertain a bunch of clowns. Zhang Yi planned to see Bailey Chongqing again, go to Deng Shentong's appointment, and then go back to Tianhai City if he had nothing to do. His team followed him without any hesitation or a backward glance. They had long understood Zhang Yi's style of doing things. How could you anger him with just a few words? Xiao Honglian, Xing Tian, and the others were dumbfounded. They all thought Zhang Yi would definitely be pissed off and take action. Unexpectedly, Zhang Yi had given everyone a big surprise. He had no temper at all and walked away after being ridiculed like that. Seeing that everyone in Zhang Yi's team had left, Xing Tian was the first to hurriedly follow. "Zhang Yi, walk slower and wait for us," he shouted. Xiao Honglian and Chen Jingguan didn't understand Zhang Yi's actions, but there was nothing they could do. They glared at the strangers in Days City, then turned around and left silently. Throughout the course of the entire exchange, Zhang Yi did not acknowledge them. In Zhang Yi's eyes, if they wanted to die and fight with the people in Days City, he would not interfere. The mutants in Days City were also dumbfounded. Can you bear being ridiculed in person like this? Is it cowardly and incompetent or too tolerant? Sun Jianming clenched his raised fist tightly. Cowardly bastard. What a joke. On the other side, Gu Hongdai, the leader of the Ice Butterfly organization, said with a smile, "Their leader looks so weak. How can such a person lead a team? As a leader, you must have enough dignity and ability. If you can't protect your own territory and your subordinates, who will obey you?" In Gu Hongdia's view, Zhang Yi's behavior is a manifestation of cowardice. At this time, Chun Liangyu, the leader of the third faction in Days City, spoke calmly without any trace of mockery. His cunning attitude showed a trace of indifference. "Isn't this just what we want?" The three looked at each other and showed a sinister smile on their faces. They can already determine what kind of situation Tianhai City is in now. Morning Dew Base, which was once one of the 5 major forces in Tianhai City, now has a leader who is actually just a Gamma-level mutant, and was hung up and beaten by Sun Jianming. In Days City, this level is at most the captain level. So they deliberately came to find trouble, in fact, to confirm the strength of the other organizations in Tianhai City. But the result, although didn't go as they planned, was still expected. They insulted the forces in Tianhai City wantonly, and they didn't even dare to talk back. What's more, they even fled in disgrace. "This is a very good opportunity," Sun Jianming said to the two in a deep voice. Gu Hongdai smiled and glanced at Sun Jianming, then Chun Liangyu. "I agree. It's rare for the three of us to get together. Why don't we find a place to have a good drink and chat?" Sun Jianming and Chun Liangyu readily agreed to Gu Hongdia's proposal. They all knew what each other was thinking. Currently, there are external forces interfering in the Jiangnan region, and in the surrounding areas of Tianhai City, several major forces have participated in the encirclement and suppression of the Wanderers in Linhai City. So, no one will care what happens in Tianhai City. They didn't sign up for that mission, and neither did Tianhai City. The purpose of these three factions had in mind was to eat the fat meat of Tianhai City. Zhu Zhang said that they were not allowed to fight among themselves. However, if they took over Tianhai City first, there were many ways to explain what happened to the higher-ups. They can claim that they were helping their neighboring cities maintain public order and targeted support for poor and weak areas. As long as they created a fait accompli first, the Jiangnan region would not say anything. After all, who would speak for the weak? Meanwhile, as the scene shifts back to the people in Tianhai City, Chen Jingguan kept looking at Zhang Yi in front of him, stammering and not daring to say a word, but inwardly he was still a little unhappy with Zhang Yi's behavior. Being humiliated in front of others, Zhang Yi, the ruler of the entire Tianhai City, didn't dare to talk back? Xiao Honglian was the first of the three to approach Zhang Yi and ask with a nervous smile, "Zhang Yi, we don't have any objections to your actions. It's just that you didn't have to treat them like that just now. Did you? What kind of treatment are you implying?" Zhang Yi glanced at her and asked coldly, "It just makes you feel a little weak. You obviously didn't have to do that," Xiao Honglian said. Zhang Yi sneered disdainfully. He glanced at Chen Jingguan behind him with a hint of contempt in his eyes. "Then what do you think I should do? Fight with them, and then be punished for violating the management regulations of Blizzard City? Or immediately fight back and quarrel with them like a shrew scolding in the street? Also, there are so many of them. Do you want me to quarrel with them all?" Zhang Yi shook his head. I don't do or entertain meaningless things. Xiao Honglian nervously replied that if Zhang Yi act this way, people will definitely believe that Tianhai City is weak and can be bullied. Hearing this, Zhang Yi just replied with a smug look on his face. Well, that's not my fault. Chun Jingguan behind him quickly buried his head in shame. Zhang Yi was clearly pointing at him. Xiao Honglian wanted to say something else, but Zhang Yi was a little impatient. Why should I, Zhang Yi, explain to you all my actions throughout my life? The sentence choked Xiao Honglian back. She didn't dare to ask any more questions and could only bow her head helplessly and say, "Don't be angry. I'm just asking casually." Then she stepped aside. You see, Zhang Yi had already seen the inner thoughts of this group of birdmen in Days City. These guys must have thought that the forces in Tianhai City were weak and could be bullied, so they probably had the idea of taking action sometime soon. Zhang Yi was sure of this without a doubt. After all, this is what he would do if he was in their position. It is most appropriate for them to take action while the Ronin are attacking and the Jiangnan district's attention is preoccupied.